Something impossible happened the night the Watchers lost their own shadow. A lone human noticed what no machine, no soldier, no empire ever caught. And now the galaxy wants to know, how did he see the danger before it even opened the door? Tell me where you're watching from, and subscribe to help this channel grow. The story begins now. Eli Warren had spent 3 years watching people try to forget a war. From his cramped security station above the Ember's Rest, he saw them all. Veterans drowning memories in cheap synth whiskey. Refugees searching for familiar faces that would never come. Humans and Seraph sharing tables in an uneasy truce that felt more like exhaustion than peace. The bar occupied a converted supply depot in Nova Lyra's civilian quarter, where the neon signs flickered just bright enough to hide the blast scars on the walls. Behind the bar hung a faded poster that read, "He fed one. Now we feed all." Nobody asked what it meant. Some memories were better left unexamined. Eli had been a behavioral analyst during the war. Now he fixed security cameras and served overpriced drinks to people who wanted to be left alone. It was perfect. No decisions, no lives hanging on his ability to read a face. Just maintenance logs and the occasional drunk to escort outside. Then she started coming in. Karenya. He learned her name from the credit chip she used. Sarath, obviously. Pale skin with that characteristic metallic sheen that caught the bar's amber lighting like liquid mercury. Eyes the color of burnished gold that never, ever stopped moving. She ordered the same thing every time. Water, no ice, and the corner table by the emergency exit, always facing the door. For the first 2 weeks, Eli told himself it was none of his business. Plenty of people had their quirks. The war had left everyone with something. But his training was a habit that never quite died, and he couldn't help noticing the patterns. She never sat with her back exposed, never relaxed her shoulders, never stopped scanning the reflections in the windows, tracking every person who entered or left. Her hands stayed visible on the table, positioned for rapid movement. When someone approached too quickly, her pupils would contract to pinpoints, and her breathing would shift to combat patterns. Eli knew those signs. He had seen them in mirrors often enough. On the third Friday, during the evening rush when the bar filled with enough bodies to feel almost normal, he watched her track a drunk Sarath stumbling toward the bathroom, her whole body tensed, ready, waiting for threat assessment. The drunk passed by without incident. She didn't relax. That's when Eli made his first mistake. Or maybe his first right choice. The line between the two had blurred somewhere around the 3rd year of trying not to care about anything. He brought her a cup of coffee, human style. The real stuff, not the synthetic garbage they usually served. "You always want to see who enters, right?" He set the cup down carefully, staying in her peripheral vision. She looked at him for the first time. Really looked. Those amber eyes scanned his face with the precision of a threat assessment algorithm running on wetware. "No," she said quietly. "I want to see who comes for me." Her accent carried that characteristic Sarath precision, each word clipped and exact. But underneath ran something else, something that made Eli's old instincts wake up and pay attention. "And has someone?" he asked. "Not yet." She stared at the coffee like it might be poisoned. "What is this?" "Concentrated poison. We drink it voluntarily. For exactly Eero." 3 seconds, her expression shifted. Not quite a smile. More like the ghost of someone who used to know how. "The correct human response," she said, still not touching the cup, "would be to ask why you stopped." Eli blinked. Then, despite 3 years of practiced emotional numbness, he laughed. Actually laughed. It felt strange, like using a muscle that had atrophied. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then paused. "Table's yours as long as you want it. No one's coming for anybody here." "Everyone's coming for somebody," Karenya said, but her hand moved toward the coffee. "That's why we watch doors." That night, Eli reviewed the security footage. Not because he thought she was dangerous, but because something about the way she moved bothered him. The hyper-awareness, the constant vigilance. It wasn't paranoia. It was surveillance, professional, military grade. But she wasn't military, not anymore. The war had been over for 2 years. So what was she watching for? And why did every instinct he had spent 3 years suppressing suddenly scream that he needed to find out? The feed flickered, and Eli noticed something he had missed in real time, just for a frame. A reflection in the window behind her table, a figure in a dark coat standing across the street, watching the bar, watching her. Eli rewound the footage. The figure was gone in the next frame, as if they had never existed at all. He sat back in his chair, old habits flooding through dormant neural pathways. His fingers moved before his brain caught up, pulling up frequency analysis from the bar's sensor array. There, right when Karenya had entered, a spike, barely perceptible, a whisper of a signal on military Sarath frequencies. It appeared every time she walked through the door. Eli closed his eyes and wondered if 3 years of not caring about anything had just come to an end. In the bar below, Karenya sat alone, facing the door, drinking poisoned water, waiting for someone to come. And in 3 days, they would. Over the next 3 weeks, Karenya became part of the furniture. She arrived at 2100 hours, left at 1:30, never varied by more than 4 minutes. Eli started brewing real coffee 15 minutes before she walked in. She never asked for it. He never asked if she wanted it. It just appeared, and she drank it while watching the door. Small conversations grew in the spaces between silence. Careful, gradual, like two people learning a language neither had spoken in years. "You were military," she said one night, not a question. Behavioral analysis, pattern recognition, threat assessment. Eli wiped down a glass that was already clean. "You? Interpreter." She paused, amber eyes tracking a couple leaving through the front entrance. "Between human and Sirath command units during the last year of the war. Must have seen some things. Things that neither side wanted anyone to see." Her fingers traced the rim of her cup. That's the problem with being the person in the middle. You hear everything, remember everything, become the evidence both sides wish they could erase. Eli set the glass down. "You're not just watching the door. You're waiting for someone specific. Multiple someones, from multiple sides." She looked at him fully, and for the first time he saw something beyond the perpetual vigilance. Exhaustion, bone-deep weariness that no amount of sleep could touch. "Tell me, human, do you know what hyperconscious post-traumatic syndrome is?" "No." Sarath neural architecture processes sensory data differently than human wetware. We can't filter, can't forget. Every sound, every movement, every micro-expression gets cataloged, cross-referenced, analyzed. She took a long drink of coffee. During the war, interpreters were enhanced, made more efficient, better at reading both species. They installed programs in our minds to help us see patterns, detect lies, predict behavior. And now you can't turn it off. There is no off switch, only constant input, constant threat analysis, constant awareness. Her hands were steady, but her voice carried the weight of years without rest. "I know 17 ways to kill someone with items on this table. I can tell you the heart rate of every person in this room. I registered 14 potential exit routes when I entered, and I've updated them 6 times based on crowd density. Right now, your left shoulder is elevated by 3 centimeters, suggesting old injury, probably from carrying weight on that side, likely military equipment configuration." Eli glanced at his shoulder. She was right. Old shrapnel wound that never quite healed correctly. That sounds exhausting. For the second time since they met, Karenya almost smiled. "You have no idea." "You ever sleep?" "Once. For 11 minutes, 2 weeks ago." She set the cup down with mathematical precision. "I woke up screaming, convinced someone had breached my defenses. Took 4 hours to confirm I was wrong. And Eli pulled up a stool across from her, breaking his own rule about maintaining professional distance. "You're safe here." "No one is safe, human. Not even you. Maybe that's why I stay, to make sure at least someone can try." She studied him with that unsettling Serath focus, looking for deception, finding none. Something shifted in her posture, not relaxation, just a tiny decrease in the constant readiness for violence. "What's your name?" she asked. "Your real name, not the one on your employment file." "Eli. Eli Warren." "Eli." She tested the syllables. "I am Karenya, though you already knew that from the credit chip analysis you ran." "You noticed." "I notice everything. It's the curse." She paused. "Thank you for the voluntary poisoning ritual." This time Eli laughed. Actually laughed. The sound surprised him. Over the following weeks, she taught him to read Serath micro-expressions. He taught her to appreciate the stupidity of cat videos. She described the war from the translator's booth, the secrets that should have stayed buried. He shared the guilt of reading faces, of knowing when someone lied about being fine, of doing nothing because orders said not to. She showed him how Serath humor worked, the precision timing, the mathematical delivery. He introduced her to human idioms that made no logical sense. She watched them anyway, trying to understand why inefficiency could be funny. One night she fell asleep at the table. Just dropped off mid-sentence, her body finally surrendering. Eli froze, watching the security feed, ready for her to wake screaming. She slept for 11 minutes, then 17, then 37. When she woke, tears tracked down metallic cheeks. "I dreamed," she whispered. "I haven't dreamed in 4 years." "What did you dream about?" "Nothing. Beautiful, empty nothing. No analysis, no threat assessment. Just darkness and quiet." She wiped her face with precise movements. "Thank you. I didn't do anything. You watched the door, so I didn't have to." That night, Eli asked the question he'd been avoiding. "Karenya, why does a Serath signal ping every time you walk in?" She went absolutely still, the kind of stillness that preceded violence or flight. "You noticed." I'm a behavioral analyst, I notice things." She reached into her jacket with deliberate slowness. Eli's hand moved toward the panic button. She pulled out a small translucent cube that pulsed with faint blue light. "This," she said, "is why I can never sit with my back to the door." In the cube, voices spoke, human and Serath. High command, making decisions that rewrote history. "And this," she touched her temple, "is how they make sure I can never run far enough to be safe. They put a tracker in my mind, Eli. Every time I feel fear, it sends my location, and I feel fear every second of every day." Eli stared at the cube, at her, at the implications spreading like cracks through everything he thought he knew about the piece. "That night you asked if I was safe?" "I lied. They're always coming. The signal gets stronger each time, and when they arrive, they won't just want the recordings. They'll want you gone. Permanently." Eli made a decision that would change everything. "Then we destroy the signal, break the tracker, set you free." "That's impossible. It's integrated with my neural architecture. Removing it would kill me." "Then we find another way." He met her amber gaze. "Because nobody should have to watch their own fear just to survive." Karenya looked at him like he'd suggested flying to a star using only hope and stupidity, which, in a way, he had. "You're either very brave or very foolish. In my experience, there's not much difference." He stood up. "Besides, I'm pretty good at finding ways to break things that aren't supposed to break." That night, someone stood across the street watching. The signal grew stronger, and in 3 days, they would come. But for the first time in 4 years, Karenya felt something other than fear. She felt hope, the most irrational human emotion of all. Eli spent 2 days buried in the bar's sensor logs, running analysis that hadn't been relevant since the war ended. Karenya sat at her table, teaching him Sarath signal architecture between sips of poisoned coffee. The implant was supposed to be one way, she explained, sketching diagrams on napkins. Passive tracker, location only, that's what they told us. But you don't believe that. I stopped believing things the day I translated the Deneb 4 evacuation orders and realized they were coordinating a massacre, not a rescue. Her fingers moved across the napkin with surgical precision. The treaty called it a regrettable miscalculation. 12,000 Sarath civilians. Regrettable. Eli pulled up another data stream. There, the signal spikes correlate with your biometrics, not just location. They're reading your vitals. Heart rate, neural activity, stress hormones. Bidirectional. Karenya's voice went flat. They're not just tracking me. They're monitoring my emotional state. Which means every time you relax, every time you drop your guard, they know. Eli felt something cold settle in his gut. And the more afraid you are, the stronger the signal. You're broadcasting your own fear. She laughed, not the almost smile he'd seen before. This was harsh, bitter. Beautiful, isn't it? I'm the perfect prisoner. They don't even need bars. Just make the cell inside my own head. The more I try to hide, the louder I scream. There's more. Eli zoomed in on the frequency analysis. The signal's been increasing in strength over the past 3 weeks, since you started coming here. Since you started sleeping, laughing, feeling safe. She closed her eyes. Hope is making me visible. They sat in silence, the weight of that realization pressing down like gravity. The recordings, Eli said finally. What's actually on them? Karenya activated the cube. A voice filled the small space. Human. Male. Senior officer from the accent. Deneb 4 neutralization is green-lit. Confirm civilian presence is acceptable collateral for strategic advantage. History will forgive necessity. Another voice. Sarath command. Cold. Logical. Acknowledged. Treaty terms will reflect human culpability. Balance maintained. They planned it together, Eli breathed. The massacre, the treaty, the whole thing was theater. The war ended because both sides agreed to bury their crimes and blame lower-ranking officers. Perfect peace built on perfect lies. She deactivated the cube. I kept this because someone needed to remember, to carry the truth, even if it could never be spoken. If this gets out, the entire alliance collapses. Yes. And they know you have it. Obviously. So they can't just kill you. They need to retrieve it first. Quietly. No questions. No investigations. Eli ran calculations in his head, old tactical training resurging. That's why they haven't moved yet. They're trying to isolate you. Identify anyone you might have shared it with. Build a kill box around you so complete that when you disappear, no one asks questions. Karenya met his eyes. And now you're in that box with me. I'm sorry. I should never have stayed. Should never have let you offer coffee. Should never have... Hoped? Humans. She shook her head. You make everything complicated. That's our specialty, along with stubborn stupidity and refusing to accept that things are impossible. He pulled up schematics. The implant. Can you feel it? Locate it. It's diffuse. Integrated throughout my neural tissue. Trying to remove it would be like trying to unthread color from cloth. Then we don't remove it. We destroy it. All at once. Fast enough that it can't compensate. That would require an electromagnetic pulse strong enough to burn out military-grade biotech without killing me. The equipment for that would cost more than this entire bar is worth, require 3 specialists, and take a week to calibrate. She paused. Unless you're suggesting we improvise. I'm absolutely suggesting we improvise. That's suicide. Probably, but it's also the most human thing I can think of. He grinned. Besides, I've got a blender with really good capacitors and a scooter battery that might be compatible if I reconfigure the voltage limiters. Karenya stared at him. You want to destroy my neural implant with kitchen equipment. And a scooter battery. Don't forget the scooter battery. This will solve something? No. But now we'll be eating French fries while we figure it out. It's what we do under pressure. For the first time since he'd met her, Karenya actually laughed. Really laughed. The sound was rusty, unpracticed, but genuine. You're insane. Been told that before, usually right before things work. He pulled out schematics from the bar's equipment storage. We've got maybe 48 hours before they move. The signal's too strong now. They're done watching. They're coming. And when they come, they won't just send retrieval specialists. They'll send erasure teams, both sides, human and Sarath, united in wanting me gone. Good. Always easier to fight when both your enemies are in the same room. Eli started pulling equipment lists. Also makes targeting less complicated. You're talking about fighting professional military units with a bartender's jury-rigged electronics. Technically, I was a senior analyst, and the electronics will be aggressively jury-rigged. He looked at her seriously. Karenya, I can't promise this works. Can't promise we survive. But I can promise that if we do nothing, you stay in that cell in your head forever. And I spent 3 years not caring about anything. I'm tired of it. She looked at the diagrams, at the ridiculous plan taking shape, at him. Why? You barely know me. I've brought nothing but danger to your peaceful, forgotten corner of the galaxy. Because nobody should have to watch doors forever. Because you laughed at my coffee joke. Because you fell asleep and dreamed of nothing, and it made you cry. He met her amber gaze. Because someone has to care. Might as well be the stubborn bartender with a death wish and really good capacitors. Karenya's smile carried a weight he couldn't quite identify. Gratitude, sorrow, hope, fear, all tangled together in something too complex for words. There's a problem with your plan, she said quietly. Just one. The implant is bidirectional. If it dies, it sends a final transmission. Everything it's recorded, every conversation, every face, everyone who helped. She touched his hand. When we destroy it, we destroy ourselves. The recording gets transmitted to both commands. And you become the human who aided a fugitive in possessing evidence of war crimes. So we're both dead anyway. Essentially, Eli thought about that. About 3 years of not caring, about coffee rituals and cat videos and the sound of someone finally sleeping, about the weight of secrets and the cost of truth. Then we make it count, he said. We destroy the implant, yes, but we time it perfectly, right when they come for you, right when both sides are watching. We let the dying transmission send everything, not just your location, everything, the recordings, the treaty lies, all of it. To everyone. Karenya went very still. You want to weaponize my death. I want to weaponize your freedom. You've carried this alone for years. Let the whole galaxy carry it instead. No more secrets. No more watching doors. Just truth. Loud and impossible to ignore. They'll kill us both. Probably. But at least we'll be the ones who decided how we die. He started sketching modifications. And who knows? Maybe we'll get lucky. Maybe humanity's talent for stubborn survival and absurd improvisation will pull through. She picked up a napkin, studying the equations. This has a less than 7% chance of working. So you're saying there's a chance? Karenya laughed again, that rusty, unpracticed sound that was becoming more frequent, more real. Humans. Absolutely insane. Pretty much. But we're really good at it. Outside, shadows moved in the darkness. The signal pulsed stronger. And in 27 hours, the doors would open. The bar would become a battlefield. And 2 people who had spent years being alone would discover that hope, however irrational, was the most dangerous weapon humanity had ever created. That night, Karenya slept for 2 hours, dreamlessly, while Eli stayed awake, watching the door. Not because he was afraid of what might come through it, but because for the first time in 3 years, he had something worth protecting. And across the street, the Watchers closed in, unaware that their perfect prison was about to become a broadcast station that would crack the galaxy wide open. 24 hours before the world would change, Eli sat in the bar's back room surrounded by dissected appliances and borrowed equipment. The electromagnetic pulse device looked less like professional military hardware and more like something a particularly ambitious teenager might build for a science fair. Karenya examined it with the kind of expression someone might reserve for a bomb built by a well-meaning but incompetent friend. "This will either free me or kill me." Technically, it might do both. Eli connected another wire. "But at least you'll be free first." Human optimism is a fascinating phenomenon, statistically irrational but somehow functional. We prefer to think of it as strategic delusion. He tested a connection. Sparks flew. They both jumped. "See? Already working better than expected." She laughed, and he realized the sound was becoming familiar. Not easy, not yet, but less rusty, less surprised by its own existence. They'd spent the last day preparing, not just the equipment. The plan required precision timing. The implant's final transmission would broadcast everything in its memory banks. 4 years of surveillance, every conversation, every face, every location, and nested inside that data, hidden in military-grade encryption that only Karenya's neural architecture could decode. The recordings, the truth about Deneb 4, the coordinated massacre, the treaty built on lies. "They'll come in 2 teams, Karenya said, reviewing sensor data. Sarath retrieval specialists through the front, human military contractors through the service entrance. They'll try to box me between crossfire, force compliance, retrieve the cube without having to explain a body. Unless we change the terrain." Eli pulled up the bar's layout. Security shutters on all windows, electromagnetic locks on doors, and this. He tapped a junction box. "If we route the EMP through the building's power grid, we can overload every electronic system in a 3-block radius, including their equipment, and the implant. And the implant." He met her eyes. "But here's the thing. The transmission. When it dies, it broadcasts everything. If we time it right, if we route it through the bar's communication array, we can amplify the signal. Send it everywhere. Every news network. Every military frequency. Every civilian channel. No one could suppress it. Thus, no one could pretend they didn't see it." Eli finished the last connection. "The galaxy gets to decide what to do with the truth, not the people who buried it." Karenya was quiet for a long moment. "You understand this destroys both of us. The recordings implicate human command. Your species will see you as a traitor. Mine will see you as a saboteur. Both sides will want you silenced." "Yeah, I figured." "And you're doing it anyway." "I spent 3 years watching people try to forget. Maybe it's time someone remembered." He started running diagnostics. "Besides, you taught me something important." "What?" "That hope is poisonous, gets into your system, makes you do stupid, irrational things, like caring about whether someone can finally sleep without fear." He smiled. "Terrible substance. Highly addictive. No known cure." She touched his shoulder, a gesture he'd learned meant profound gratitude in Sarath culture. "When this is over, if somehow we survive, I owe you roughly 17,000 hours of sleep. I'll watch the door." They worked through the night refining the plan, building redundancies, accepting that no amount of preparation could account for the chaos they were about to unleash. Around 0300, Karenya stopped. "I need to tell you something about the recordings." "What about them?" "There's more than just Deneb 4. The cube contains everything I translated during the last year of the war. Battle plans, strategic decisions, communications between species that were never supposed to meet." She activated the cube, and voices filled the room. Human generals, Sarath admirals, all speaking in codes she'd broken. They didn't just coordinate one massacre. They orchestrated the entire endgame, decided which colonies would burn, which cities would survive, which populations were acceptable losses, all for a peace that benefited them. The recordings played, orders given, lives traded like currency, children classified as strategic variables, hope weaponized and deployed and discarded. Eli listened, feeling something cold and ancient settle in his chest. The weight of knowing, the burden of truth. "How did you carry this alone?" he asked. "Poorly. That's why I ended up in a bar, watching doors, waiting for the courage to either use it or die trying." She looked at him. "You gave me a third option. Broadcast it and see what happens. Let the galaxy be infected with knowledge they can't unknow. Revolution through radical transparency. Chaos through truth." She smiled grimly. "The most human weapon of all." At the 900, the sensors detected movement. Professional. Coordinated. Two teams moving into position with the kind of precision that spoke of extensive training and unlimited resources. Eli activated the security feeds. There. Seraph operatives in adaptive camouflage, positioning around the front entrance. And there. Human contractors in civilian clothes, securing the back exits. 12 total. Maybe 15. "They're early," Karenya said, her voice carrying that old vigilance. "They know we're planning something." "Good means we surprise them. They wouldn't rush if they felt in control." Eli pulled up the makeshift EMP. "You ready for this?" "No, but that's never stopped humans before, so why should it stop me?" She picked up his welding torch, the closest thing to a weapon they had. "Plan B? There is no Plan B." "See, that's what I thought." She laughed, wild and free. "You know what? I'm glad it's you. If I have to die in a ridiculous improvised battle against overwhelming odds, at least it's with someone who makes good coffee." "That's the nicest thing anyone's ever said to me. Your life must have been very sad." "It was, until a nervous alien started ordering water with no ice and ruining my peaceful retirement." They looked at each other, and something passed between them. Understanding, gratitude, the recognition that some connections burn bright precisely because they know they're temporary. Outside, someone gave an order. The teams began to move. Eli activated the emergency lockdown. Metal shutters slammed over windows. Doors sealed with electromagnetic precision. The bar transformed from a place of forgetting into something else, something defensible. Karenya took up position facing the door, for the last time, but now Eli stood beside her, both of them watching, both of them ready. "When they breach, we activate the EMP. The implant dies. The broadcast begins." Eli's hand hovered over the activation switch. "And whatever happens next, at least we tried." "Tried to do what?" "Something that matters. Something bigger than survival." He smiled. "Something magnificently, stupidly human." The front door exploded inward. The back entrance buckled under cutting torches. And in the space between breaths, between heartbeats, between the weight of the past and the uncertainty of the future, Eli looked at Karenya and said the thing that needed saying. "Thank you for trusting me, for teaching me that hope is worth the poison." She squeezed his hand. "Thank you for making me believe I could turn my back to a door." The teams poured in like water through broken dams. Weapons raised. Orders barked in 2 languages. Eli saw the team leader, Serath. Commander Sorrel from the insignia, saw recognition flash across his face. "The translator," Sorrel said, "You've caused considerable trouble." "That's my specialty," Karenya replied. From the back, a human voice. "Gravel and cigarettes." "Stand down, civilian. This doesn't concern you." "Colonel Hayes," Eli said, old military records flooding back. "Deneb 4, you gave the order." Hayes's expression didn't change. "Regrettable necessity. For the greater good." 12,000 people. 12,000 variables. One piece. Hayes raised his weapon. Give us the cube. Walk away. Live out your meaningless life in your meaningless bar. That's not an option anymore, Eli said. Then you die for nothing. No. Karenya's voice carried across the sudden silence. We die for everything. For everyone you erased. For all the truth you buried. She looked at Eli. Now? Now. Eli hit the switch, and the galaxy changed. The electromagnetic pulse hit like a wave of invisible fire. Every light in the bar died. Every weapon with electronic targeting systems went dark. Every communication device screamed static and fell silent. But the makeshift EMP wasn't designed for efficiency. It was designed for one thing: burning out a neural implant without killing its host. Karenya screamed. Not pain, recognition. 4 years of constant surveillance, constant fear, constant analysis burning away in a single brilliant moment. The implant died, but not quietly, not peacefully. It died broadcasting. Every conversation, every hidden face, every secret location. And nested inside all that data, encrypted in patterns only her neural architecture could have decoded, the recordings burst free. The truth about Denna before. The coordinated massacre. The treaty lies. Everything. Broadcasting on every frequency, amplified by the bar's communication array, shooting into orbit, bouncing off satellites, spreading like a virus of knowledge across every network in the system. You couldn't suppress what everyone already saw. Couldn't classify what was already public. Couldn't bury what had been exhumed in front of billions of witnesses. Eli felt the EMP's edge effects. His vision doubled. His heart stuttered. Worth it. So worth it. He looked at Karenya. She was on her knees, tears streaming down metallic cheeks, hands pressed to her temples. It's quiet, she whispered. It's finally quiet. The soldiers recovered fast. Training overrode confusion. Soral raised his weapon, traditional ballistic, no electronics. Hayes did the same. Both converging. Both understanding that the plan had just become infinitely simpler. Kill the witnesses. Deny everything. Too late for prevention. Still time for damage control through elimination. Eli grabbed the welding torch, laughable weapon against professional killers. But humans had a talent for making laughable work. Stay down, he told Karenya. No. She stood, unsteady but rising, for the first time in 4 years, standing without the constant background static of threat analysis. Just her mind. Just her will. Just her choice. I've spent enough time on my knees. 3 things happened simultaneously. First, the EMP's overload cascaded through the building's power grid. Lights exploded. Electrical systems detonated. Fire suppression activated, spraying the room with foam. Second, the communication array, instead of dying cleanly, went into a feedback loop, broadcasting the recordings on repeat, each iteration amplifying, spreading wider, reaching further. System after system picking up the signal. News networks, military channels, civilian frequencies. Every screen in the system lighting up with voices of the dead and the decisions that killed them. Third, Karenya laughed. Really laughed. Free and wild and slightly unhinged. Gambiara, she said, using Eli's word. Very human. Soral fired. The shot went wide, thrown off by the foam. Hayes rushed forward, tactical training overriding the chaos. Eli swung the torch, not trying to hit, just creating space, buying seconds. Karenya moved, not with her old hyper-awareness, not with calculated precision, just with the desperate creative chaos that humans had perfected. She grabbed a chair, threw it, not at the soldiers, at the remaining power junction. It exploded. Secondary EMP, smaller but concentrated. Close enough that anyone with military-grade neural augments, the kind that enhanced tactical processing and combat effectiveness, the kind that both Soral and Hayes absolutely had, would feel like ice picks through their skulls. Both commanders dropped, trying to maintain consciousness through the neural feedback. That's for Deneb 4, Karenya said. The remaining soldiers hesitated. Chain of command disrupted, orders unclear, and spreading across their communication feeds, playing on every frequency. Recordings of their commanders ordering atrocities, coordinating massacres, trading lives like currency. One soldier, human, maybe 20 years old, lowered his weapon. Is it true? Deneb 4? Was it really coordinated? Yes, Eli said. We were told it was an accident, friendly fire, miscommunication. It was a choice, made by people who thought nobody would ever know. Karenya stepped forward. Now everyone knows. What you do with that knowledge is up to you. The soldier looked at his commanders, writhing on the floor, looked at his team, looked at the screens, broadcasting truth. He made a choice, the human talent for choosing. Stand down, he ordered. Everyone, stand down. Not everyone listened. 3 contractors didn't care about truth, only completion, only payment. They raised weapons. That's when the bar's improvised security system, juiced by the EMP's feedback, activated. Ely had programmed it months ago, drunk and bored, never thinking it would matter. Every sprinkler, every emergency system, every failsafe, activating simultaneously. The bar became a storm of water and foam and sparking electricity and sheer chaotic nonsense. You couldn't fight in that, couldn't see, couldn't coordinate, could only survive. Eli grabbed Karenya, pulled her behind the bar, his old hiding spot where he'd watched people forget for 3 years. You okay? I don't know. She was shaking. The quiet, it's so loud. That's called peace. Feels weird at first. I hate it. It's wonderful. I hate that it's wonderful. She laughed, hysterical, joyful. Is this what you feel like all the time? Just existing without constant analysis? More or less. Well, with more anxiety and self-doubt. But significantly less threat assessment. How do you function? Poorly, with coffee and stubbornness. She kissed him, quick, impulsive, human. Thank you for the voluntary poisoning. The chaos resolved. Soldiers made choices. Some left. Some stayed. But nobody fired another shot. Because the galaxy was watching now. Billions of eyes on a bar in Nova Lyra, where truth had just been weaponized by a bartender and a translator. Commander Saral, recovered enough to stand, looked at Karenya. You were always the bravest of us. I see that now. Colonel Hayes said nothing, just stared at the screens, at the truth he'd spent years burying, now immortal and infinite. Emergency response arrived. Medical teams, military police, investigators. The bar filled with people asking questions nobody wanted to answer. Eli and Karenya were separated, processed, statements taken. Eli didn't remember most of it, just fragments. Paramedics treating his EMP exposure. Questions about his military service, more questions about the equipment. Someone mentioning possible charges, someone else mentioning possible commendations. Legal chaos unfolding across every level of government. He woke in a medical facility 3 days later, neural patterns stable, physical injuries minimal, legal status complicated. Karenya was gone. No discharge records, no transfer orders, just gone. Like she'd never existed, except for what she'd left behind. On the table next to his bed, a small metallic flower, beautiful, precise, Serath craftsmanship, and a message in her handwriting. Now I can sit with my back to the door, because I know you're watching. Eli picked up the flower, felt its weight, its permanence, its promise. 2 weeks later, he returned to the bar. The Ember's Rest had become famous. Pilgrimage site, tourist attraction, the place where truth had cracked a galaxy open. Someone had already made a holo vid about it, wildly inaccurate but enthusiastically produced. The bar was damaged but repairable. The table was still there. Karenya's table, facing the door. Eli sat down. For the first time in his life, he sat with his back to the exit. Not because he wasn't afraid, but because someone had to carry what she'd carried. Someone had to watch while others finally rested. A month passed, then 3. The galaxy processed. Investigations launched. Tribunals convened. People argued about truth and necessity and the cost of peace. Some things changed. Some things stayed buried. But the knowledge existed now. Couldn't be annulled. Couldn't be forgotten. Eli ran the bar, served coffee, watched people process the weight of knowing. And every night, he sat at that table facing the door, the metallic flower beside him. Until one night, 6 months after the broadcast, someone sat down across from him. Didn't ask. Just sat, with their back to the door. Eli looked up. Karenya smiled, tired, changed, but free. Hello, Eli. You came back. I had to. Someone promised me 17,000 hours of sleep, and I've been keeping track. She looked around the bar. Also, I missed the voluntary poisoning ritual. Coffee's fresh, still poisonous. Perfect. They sat in comfortable silence, not the silence of hypervigilance, not the quiet of fear, just the ordinary, beautiful silence of two people who had survived something impossible together. Where did you go? He asked finally. Places, testifying, hiding, healing, learning how to exist without constant threat analysis. She accepted the coffee he poured. It's harder than it sounds. The quiet. Sometimes I miss the noise, miss the certainty of constant danger. At least I knew what I was fighting. Now I'm fighting nothing, which is somehow more terrifying and more wonderful than anything I experienced during the war. She looked at him. Thank you for watching doors, for making hope poisonous, for teaching me that stubbornness is a valid survival strategy. Anytime you need someone to improvise impossible solutions with inadequate equipment, I'm your human. I'll remember that. And Eli? Yeah. Next time you see me walk in, don't let me face the door. Make me sit with my back to it. Make me practice being free. Deal, but only if you promise to laugh at terrible coffee jokes. I can work with that. And so they did. The galaxy moved on, carrying its new knowledge, processing its truths, making its choices. Some good, some terrible. All visible now. All accountable. In a bar on Nova Terra, in the colony of Nova Lyra, in a system that had learned the hard way that buried truths only grow more toxic with time, two people sat together, one facing the door, one with their back to it, both free, both choosing to stay. Because that's the thing about humanity that the galaxy kept forgetting. We don't survive because we're strong. We don't win because we're smart. We endure because we're stubborn. Because we believe that hope, however irrational, however poisonous, is worth the cost. Because we refuse to watch doors forever. And when we find someone who has to, we stand beside them until they can finally turn their back to the world and rest. Karenya fell asleep at the table that night, deeply, dreamlessly, with her back to the door. And Eli watched over her, not because she needed protection, but because someone had to carry the gift she'd given him. The knowledge that watching over someone isn't weakness. It's the strongest thing humans have ever learned to do. And somewhere in the galaxy, on 1,000 worlds, on 1,000,000 screens, the recordings played. A reminder, a warning, a promise that truth, once freed, cannot be caged again. Some people called them heroes. Some called them traitors. Most just called them the bartender and the translator who decided that hope was worth fighting for, even when fighting meant burning down everything, including themselves, just to let light in. The galaxy remembered. And so, in a quiet bar where coffee flowed like poison and doors were watched by volunteers, two people discovered what it meant to finally be free. Not because the danger was gone, but because they'd learned that some things are worth facing danger for, like truth, like hope, like the simple revolutionary act of turning your back to a door. Welcome to humanity. We make everything complicated, but we make it worth it. And we never ever stop watching over the people who taught us how to hope. Never. In the end, Eli and Karenya didn't change the galaxy because they were powerful. They changed it because they dared to stop running. That's the quiet truth buried under every battle we fight. Sometimes humanity's greatest weapon isn't strength or brilliance, but the stubborn courage to stand still and say, "Not this time." And maybe that's the real lesson of their story. Not that hope saves us, but that hope bothers us into doing something slightly insane, and occasionally, miraculously, right. Now let me ask you, when was the last time you chose truth even knowing it might cost you something? What doors do you keep watching? And what would happen if, just once, you turned your back to them? And if someone sat beside you in your worst moment, would you let them carry the weight with you? Or would you pretend you're fine like a professionally trained emotional disaster? Before you go, I want to know who stayed with me until the end of this journey across bar fights, lies, and illegally modified kitchen appliances. Comment the word backdoor, because turning your back to danger is the most HFY thing someone can do. Tell me your city. Subscribe if you felt something. Hit like. Hype this video. Share it with someone who needs a reminder that truth is worth the mess. And don't forget to watch the next story appearing now on your screen, where, as always, humanity insists on improvising its way through the universe.